Master Naofumi. It's too much. It feels like you're trying to prepare us for when you're not going to be around anymore. It doesn't matter if Glass, Lark, and Therese show up again. We can beat them. We can beat the waves. I know it.
Now or never. Just fight it out. Just fight it out. Just fight it out.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News Anime Night, where we take a particular series, we analyze it episode by episode, give the highs, the lows, and everything in between. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Jarek. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And joining me, obviously, is my lovely wife, Andrea. Andrea, this is probably by far the most difficult season that we've had to review, isn't it? All 4 episodes of it.
I thought there was 5.
4. I double-checked the count.
Okay.
So there are 4 episodes of this. Aren't you just absolutely exhausted with the 2 hours you had to watch?
No.
Why not?
'Cause.
Have you found the Fountain of Youth? Do you have infinite endurance?
Sure, why not?
Do you have the stamina of a Dark Souls character? So, we are talking the 4th episode and finale of Season 1.5, which is called, aptly enough, The Rising of the Shield Hero. So, last time we had started up, or the wave had begun. We had taken care of a lot of monsters, but then, out of nowhere, Lark and Therese turned on everybody and immediately challenged Naofumi to take down the Shield Hero. And it got even worse when Glass came back into this wave and then challenged Naofumi as well. So at that point, it was pretty much cemented that Glass, Lark, and Therese were allies. And now we come back, and I don't want to say Lark and Therese are meaningless in this episode, but they kind of are. Because what basically happens is Naofumi and Glass go off to a ship to fight each other, and they basically leave the rest of their parties behind to fight each other, except they really don't. They actually just kind of spectate Naofumi and Glass's fight, ultimately. And so at that point, the whole goal of this is basically Naofumi versus Glass, who will win and thus destroy the wave, kind of thing. And while that's happening, Naofumi notices a bit of a weakness with Glass. First of all, I like the fact that they show that Naofumi has grown enough that he can actually stand toe-to-toe with Glass. Because in the previous wave, he was also struggling to keep up with Glass. Not as much as the rest, but he's basically toe-to-toe with her. I like that concept, but they also show that she has a weakness to one of his newer shields, which is the Soul Eater shield. Now, everything that he's killed up until this point, hasn't really done anything. It drains their SP, and that's it. But apparently to Glass, it's a way bigger deal. And so it's the shield that scores a lot of hits with her. First of all, how did you feel about them being toe-to-toe now? And discovering this weird weakness that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but okay.
I guess it's just satisfying, you know.
I think it's a great thing to showcase the progress that the Shield Hero has made, especially since Lark is not necessarily a good measuring stick. I mean, he's a good measuring stick with the grinding and Calmira, but in a lot of cases, people wanted to just see, like, Glass come back and then just see how Naofumi stood up to him. And I should also point out that the other heroes do get involved in the fight with Lark, but they are promptly ass-whipped out of the whole fight. So the shield, the spear, and the bow are basically useless in this one. And with Glass, it's no different. And so with that knowledge, Naofumi basically starts planning a strategy for him to be able to get hits in with the Soul Eater shield. And it starts working to an extent, and then Lark and Therese get involved. They give her a potion, say like, okay, we'll come in and help. And at that point, Naofumi has Raftalia and Philo kind of join him on the boat, And he's like, okay, well, this sucks because all of my progress just got wasted away with a potion. And the next part of this is a little confusing, but if people remember, Raftalia commandeered the boat of one Morelia, that's her name, where she was getting ready to go out to the big fish, and Raftalia commandeered the boat and got her to do that. She is a party member of the bow hero. So at that point, she's still out on the boat, and they've concocted a plan in order to counter Glass, where Morelia and Riscia, or actually, no, Riscia is the bow party member. Morelia is the queen, I believe. And they concoct a plan basically to take some of the barrels, like the depth charges that they had with the alcohol in it, and use wind magic to get it over to that ship and then explode them to either do damage or however that goes. The way it goes is they open the barrels up and it rains the alcohol down on them, and that somehow is enough to intoxicate Glass. So now she's like poisoned or intoxicated.
Amazing.
Can we talk about this for a second? Is there any way she could have gotten that into her mouth? I don't think any of them like splash onto the boat, and so like a big wave could have hit her in the face. They just basically show it like it's raining down, and that's apparently enough to intoxicate Glass.
Is that what it was meant to do, or?
I don't know. And that's the other part that's worrisome to me, is like the application of these things up until that point was siege damage. So like they were set out in the water like depth charges to explode. And that's not what happened here. It basically the barrels, they don't blast open, they crush open, and alcohol is all over the boat. So like you can see like NAOFUMI has some on and Raftalia does, and the only one that seems affected by it is Glass.
I thought they just did that just because it was a way of like almost like threatening, like, oh, I'll set you on fire if you,
something like that, you know, like maybe that's the reason. Because
I'm like, I don't think it would have just easily drained her of her magic or whatever.
Now, up until this point, we also notice a little bit of character development with NAOFUMI. He is hesitant about killing Lark, Therese, or Glass, because as it's revealed, Glass actually calls herself the fan hero. So basically, they are heroes from another world, and in order for them to be able to save their world, they have to do these waves and triumph over other heroes. So at that point, he's very hesitant to do anything about that and try to save her, as well as being able to take care of the wave, too. How'd you feel about that? Where he was unwilling to kill Glass. Do you think it was a good idea?
Well, if they're not like monsters that are affiliated with this world.
They aren't, and that's actually one of the things that Raftalia mentions, is like they are not from this world, and you have so many other people in this world that you want to protect. And so at that point, that kind of snaps NAOFUMI out of it, and he's ready to finish things. But after the intoxication, Glass looks like she's in really bad shape. And then we start to notice that the wave timer is about to run out. And so Lark and Therese basically take Glass back to the other side of the portal, and the wave ends. Which to me is kind of a non-starter, but I kind of understand why they did that. We didn't want him to kill Glass like right off the bat. We wanted to see maybe a much more fair encounter with her. At least that's kind of my viewpoint. Do you think that it should have ended that way?
That they should have ended by
basically the wave expired, and so they had to run away.
Well, that's
so it's kind of a non-ending to a fight. Like there's no winner to it.
Well, that was kind of very similar to the last wave they did, because the timer ran out and they ended up having to retreat.
That's ultimately what Glass had to do there too. But I think it's a little bit of a non-ending, just because now that NAOFUMI can stand toe-to-toe with her, maybe it would have been better to at least see if it could have ended with NAOFUMI on top. I'm not saying that he should have killed Glass, but maybe he could have at least, made that final hit And then you get the Naofumi wins, you know, kind of thing. That's at least with me. After the time runs out, they all return to Calmyra and celebrate the winning of the wave, ultimately. And also, Naofumi kind of takes all the things that he learned during that fight to heart. Is like, okay, I am fighting other people from other worlds that are probably just like me, who came across a random book and then got shoved into a world and its conflicts, whether or not they liked it. And that seems to weigh on him a little bit. You can kind of tell, like, he doesn't know if this is the way that he would do things, just because now he's not as callous and cruel as he used to be. By the way, he almost killed himself during that fight too. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Because he was about to do that blood sacrifice thing again, and then ultimately it didn't matter. Like, he did actually bring out the cursed shield for the latter part of that, and maybe it's a good thing that they pulled out, because he still could have used that cursed fire to kill them all. So after that, we then get another little revelation with Rishia, where she has been kicked out of Itsuki's party for being weak. And so she's basically going to go drown. Like, they catch her when she's about to go drown herself out in the ocean. And so they try to get her out of there. And then she explains basically what happened, which is she gets kicked out, not just because she's weak, but also, funniest thing, there's also a false allegation put out against her where she tried to betray the bow hero. Now, Itsuki's also kind of butthurt because he didn't stand a chance against Lark Therese. It's very clearly shown with Motoyasu, Itsuki, and Rin. They are butthurt that they couldn't do anything against these other heroes.
Well, didn't they accuse her of breaking something?
It was something like that. It was a false accusation.
Well, yeah.
And basically what happened is somebody leveled the accusation, and Itsuki was just butthurt, and so he believed it, kind of thing. And his viewpoint was like, she's holding us back anyway. So at that point, she is heartbroken, because, like, this is, to some of these adventurers, like, this is the biggest honor you'll ever get. And the fact that you lose it is the greatest dishonor. And I actually like how Naofumi handles this, because Naofumi basically brings her into the party and says, like, well, screw him. You know, I see value in what you did, because he knew, like, what she contributed in that fight. And he openly admits, like, I wouldn't have won if you hadn't have done that. So at that point, he basically says, why don't you come and work for me instead? Which is exactly what I think he should have done. Because basically what is happening here, it's not as severe, but she basically got Naofumi'd off of the party. And so it's appropriate that the guy who originally got Naofumi'd takes her in and says, okay, prove your worth to me. And like, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to do this because it'll piss off Itsuki. It's because, like, he basically says to her, okay, prove your worth to me, and we'll give you a place to stay, kind of thing. And I like how Rishia kind of agrees to that, and now they have a new party member, maybe one that's going to be a little bit more steady than Melty. And also a magic user, by the way, because she uses wind magic during the fight. So you have that, but then when they return, or when they get ready to return to Melremark, Morelia reminds Naofumi after the wave that he still has a reward to claim from Morelia for participating in the waves and also destroying the church that was destroying the country. And so at that point, he does take her up on it, but we don't find out until much later, until they return home, which is he claims lordship of Sayet Village, which Sayet Village, for those who don't remember, is Raphtalia's home village. So the first wave that we see where him and Raptalia work to save them, that is Sayet. And that's where a lot of his allies for here that have joined in the army to help him. That's where they came from. So at that point, now he is kind of like how Motoyasu. I don't know if he got Seiet, but Motoyasu got a lordship over a village because Malti made it so, and they were able to take it out. Now the same thing has basically happened. Melty has presented him with the lordship of Seiet.
Yeah, didn't the people in that village like they kind of?
I want to say it was the same village that Motoyasu got, but I can't remember.
Well, didn't they kind of were in favor of the shield hero or worshipped him? They kind of were
during the episode with Motoyasu or currently?
Well, whenever, because
in that episode they hated the crown ultimately, but now because of all the things the shield hero has done in the countryside and all that, and the fact that he's been exonerated, yeah, they love the shield hero because a lot of Seiet is populated by demi-humans, and demi-humans have always known the shield hero to be an ally.
Well, yeah, because they were just because a lot of the other places, I'm pretty sure that they just didn't think the shield hero was.
Yeah, they actually openly say, if things had gone right, the country that had demi-humans as an equal class would have taken the shield hero. Mm-hmm. Because then at that point he could represent them because they all consider him to be an ally. Yeah. So that was because that was part of the original agreement before Trash changed that and brought all four to Melremark. Mm-hmm. So he becomes Lord of Seiet, which he technically does also for Raftalia because he's trying to show that he's making things good for Philo and Raftalia after they leave, or at least that's how, or after he leaves, that they're in a good spot. Because now that they've brought Seiet back to being a fishing village, she can teach them how to fish. She can teach them all that they need to know. And while he's explaining that, we have a very touching moment with Naofumi and Raftalia. Up until this point, we've been getting little scenes where Raftalia is very worried about Naofumi going home. And that he seems to be just rushing things to going home as hard as he can. And that's sad to her because if he leaves, then she's all alone again. And she doesn't want to be all alone again, and she'd rather go with Master Naofumi to wherever he goes. And so what they do is it's been building and building and building in these episodes, and here is where it explodes. Mm-hmm. Is now Raftalia kind of sees what Naofumi is doing here and immediately bursts into tears and begs Naofumi to stay, kind of thing, because she and it's understandable, right? She lost her parents in a wave. And then she also lost friends to slavers. And basically the only person that's ever brought her in has been Naofumi. Mm-hmm. Even though it was, through a slave pact. She doesn't care because he's been the only one that's cared about her aside from her parents. So at that point, they basically just go out of their way to show Raftalia is very sad about Naofumi going away. And what comes to mind when you were watching that? Is it a worthwhile explosion to have, or do you think she was overthinking it?
No, it's understandable.
No, it makes sense considering he's kind of said I want to get out of here as quick as possible, and that obviously was said with Raftalia in earshot, so that didn't help. But I like the fact that they also go out of their way to Naofumi basically says, well, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon because obviously I've got to protect you guys from these waves, and then I've got to protect all of these other people that have come to my aid, because the other thing that's kind of cool is all the people in the city of Melremark that helped the shield hero and gained a good relationship with him, they all moved out to Seiet. So that includes the blacksmith, the lady alchemist, or the lady magic user. Kung Fu Grandma shows back up, and she basically becomes the leader of the Adventurers Guild in that town to try and get recruits for Naofumi. Because that's the other big thing they're going to do, is that they're going to try and expand the party so that they can, as the waves get stronger and stronger, they'll have a better chance of survival. And so at that point, you see like all of these people coming together in the town of Sayet to kind of rebuild it and help Naofumi prepare for the task of defeating the next wave. And so at least we get kind of a no reason to be upset for Raftalia, is that he says, like, I'm not going anywhere because this is going to take a while. You know, like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to help you guys with the rebuilding. I'm going to help get our party bigger so that we can survive more. Basically trying to dissuade her worries. Like, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. What did you think about this scene? Was it, did it get you in the feels? Is basically what I'm asking.
It was heartwarming.
It actually kind of was. I especially love the fact that before they even head out to Sayet, I completely forgot to mention this, they take Rishia to the blacksmith to get her some more armor. It's like, this is the typical thing that Naofumi does, is like, he takes his new party member over to get new armor or new weapons if they need it. And I think even the blacksmith kind of notices, like, wow, this is yet another female member of your party. Like, and I remember saying to you when we were watching this, I'm like, yeah, he has straight Phoenix Wright syndrome. Like, he has nothing but girls all around him. And frankly, a lot of them are unfortunately very underage. In fact, I would say Rishia can't be... She's not an adult. She's got to be like 14, 15, something like that. So that was kind of interesting to have yet another... What do you think of Rishia? Like, is she going to be a good party member, a good contributor? Because she seems kind of clumsy when we see her in this previous wave.
Yeah, but I think she'll improve over time when she knows she has a ally to...
Tell me if my theory's wrong about this. Maybe Itsuki's group dynamic is what was wrecking her and making her clumsy. Because there was probably, like, there was a hierarchy with him. Because, again, Itsuki, like Motoyasu and Rin, he's looking at this like a video game. So at that point, like, he's taking the strongest characters, he's making sure they're part of his party and taking the weak ones and just kind of discarding them. And not really working with them at all, and not, like, he's not treating them like people. And so at that point, the fact that Naofumi takes that different approach, do we think that Rishia is going to become a better party member, or is she still going to remain clumsy?
It'd be disappointing if she doesn't, like, you know, become a really great ally, and then it'd be like the bow hero will be like...
Because the way they kind of make it out is that Rishia is like Jar Jar levels of clumsy with his party. And I think that she'll still be clumsy, because that's a good quirk for like a party dynamic, is like you have that one person that's really clumsy that everybody kind of giggles at and they all enjoy. But I do also see like her growing as a potential fighter, and who knows, maybe even Itsuki will look at her with a different eye and say like, well, you can come back and work for us because you're obviously stronger now. And I don't think Rishia would take him up on it. Because unfortunately, Itsuki is just kind of... Itsuki, Rin, and Motoyasu are continuing to prove that they are just not the heroes to back in this. It's just Naofumi, because Naofumi relates to people. So, yeah, so we're both of the opinion Rishia will be a good party member in the long run. I actually think she'll also be a good example to new party members, because she's a good story to tell people about. So like Raftalia has the good story, but you still have kind of the slavery thing on top of that. But Rishia, at her lowest point, was taken in by Naofumi. And so at that point, she has room to grow. And that's pretty much the new... that's pretty much the basis of the episodes. The other heroes do resolve to become stronger than Naofumi. So basically, they've like Naofumi's Goku, and they're all Vegeta. So at that point, they all want to get better than Naofumi, and so they go off to work on their own parties. I believe we do have some hintings at the upcoming second season, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. Like, do you remember Bellicus at all? Like, we've got a description right here, and I can't remember anybody named Bellicus being mentioned. I don't remember if there was a a secret hinting of a new threat rising. I think it just kind of ended on Sayet being rebuilt.
Yeah, I don't know.
I might be wrong. So what did this episode do right? What did it do wrong?
It was just annoying that the bow hero just makes some stupid accusation there.
So this would be something that they did wrong, is that they basically showcased Itsuki as a dumbass.
Of course.
Let me rephrase that. An elitist dumbass. Mm-hmm. I will say one positive that happened here is that technically this is how season 1 ended for a lot of people. Like, we're coming late to the party, but when these episodes came out, this is how it ended. And so at that point, if Shield Hero had been canceled right after, then this would have been a good note to end on. Kind of thing. But much like NAOFUMI'S triumphant return, where he got redeemed. So I will say that this ended properly for like a season finale, and it left room for growth in the sense of like the heroes want to get stronger than NAOFUMI. NAOFUMI is willing enough to acknowledge, we're not done yet. We need to get stronger. As far as like, I actually will say one thing that was negative to me is the fight with Glass. Is that, in my opinion, Glass was made out to be this huge threat in the previous wave because she was just kicking everybody around. NAOFUMI was still kind of getting kicked around a little bit, and this fight went out of its way to make her look weaker than she did before.
That's true.
It actually went out of its way to make her weaker, and I kind of am pissed about that because I like the fact that when they first met Glass, it took NAOFUMI'S inner rage bringing out a bullshit spell to fight back, and that was all that could happen here. And instead, he's the one on the upper hand, and he's the one that's kicking her ass, but it's not like even footing anymore. It's like as soon as he figured out her weakness, then she was done ultimately. And I almost feel like she should have adjusted her strategy instead of blindly attacking him. So I don't know if that's necessarily a fault I'd call on the fight itself. I'd call on Glass. Glass kind of came in here overconfident, and it bit her in the ass ultimately.
Yeah, because it just looked like, wow, you kind of sure gave in that.
Because Lark and Therese still treated him like a threat, like they'd fought with him, so they knew what he was capable of. And maybe that was the intention. They wanted to show Glass was overconfident and proud, and this was her humbling moment. But it just feels like it feels like the fight with Therese and Lark versus NAOFUMI and crew was better in the fact that it was a stalemate most of the time, as opposed to NAOFUMI versus Glass. Because then at that point it becomes for lack of a better term, a squash match. And that's a little irritating. So I'll say that's one thing they did wrong. I agree with you that Itsuki, who was basically considered to be one of the two voices of reason in this, comes off as a total asshole, and that was probably not the way to go. And through that, basically making the other two out to be assholes too. I kind of don't like that.
Because
like,
I can see the spear here.
Yeah, if this had been Motoyasu, it would have made a whole lot more sense.
I mean, he just seems like the one that would be the type of person to kick people out because of whatever. But the other two, you would think they'd be more neutral.
Yeah, well, because they were the ones that basically questioned whether or not NAOFUMI was guilty of all that stuff. Because as soon as NAOFUMI shows Rin, like, this is stuff you need to look into, like, he starts casting doubt. And he's friends with Itsuki, so Itsuki starts getting cast doubt in that regard. Especially, they got their asses handed to them from the church, enough to the point where we thought they were dead. So now they're just basically as asshole-ish as Motoyasu. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense with what we have so far. Kind of makes me lose respect for the guy, honestly.
I don't even know. I'd be like surprised they wouldn't just get booted back into the real world or something. At this point.
Kind of, yeah. At this point, I get that they kind of set it up of like, oh, we're going to go get as strong as NAOFUMI. Okay, that's cool. I don't mind that. But ultimately, if Morelia was going to kick out one of those heroes, it would be one of those three.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only way you can kick him out is killing him. So at that point, she'd be like, NAOFUMI, kill him. That's how I kind of see how they would have handled it. And it's kind of disappointing. I will say one thing this episode did good was Ricio.
Mm-hmm.
Ricio, that was a good moment. And that was the best way to show character growth for NAOFUMI.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he didn't immediately, if we had gotten NAOFUMI episode 2, where he was all hardened, would he have brought Ricio into the party? I don't think he would have.
I think he would have been still, suspicious.
I don't think he would have done it, period, because he hates all the other heroes for what they did to him. But this NAOFUMI, who's gone through so much more, that's a real showcasing of character growth.
Well, I think he would still not trust the other heroes. They'd be thinking, well, we're going to give you a party member. He's like, well...
Yeah, he might have actually treated Ricio like a spy.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, yeah, he wouldn't have brought her in at all. He would have been like, kicked her to the curb too. But now he's like, okay, yeah, they're jerks. You want to come work for me? I like that. I like that change. I thought that was a really good thing to do. I also like the fact that before he even said anything, Raftalia, Philo, Melty, they all basically say, this might actually be a good idea. Why don't you stay with us because we'll treat you better. And I think that was the better way to go about it. So that's a definite positive. I will also say that the lordship over Sayet was a good idea as a reward for all of the good deeds that NAOFUMI has done, because it works for him. He doesn't want to be in the castle. He hates it there. So he can be out in this town and live there, and he doesn't have to deal with the bullshit in the castle, but also he can basically be an inspiring presence in Melremark, because everybody's going to want to go out to Sayet to work with the shield hero.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that this episode went out of it. Like, the last few episodes have gone out of their way to show that the spear, the sword, and the bow are not heroes to... I don't want to say heroes to look up to, but maybe heroes not to work for. Because they don't really have much faith in anybody else.
Yeah, not unless if they start treating it more than just a game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for fuck's sake, they showed, like... do you remember how they showed the scene with Motoyasu, where he was, like, on one of those luxury couches being fed grapes by Malty? Like, of course they're not going to treat anybody good. They're basically getting the red carpet treatment, probably don't even deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
That's still effing annoying. So yeah, I like that. Other negatives... Really, the biggest negative I walked away was the fight with Glass. Should have been so much more than what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is just hinting at a bigger fight in season 2. I don't know. But those are the other ones I can come up with. Any others?
No.
Okay. So at that point, out of 5, what would we rate The Rising of the Shield Hero, the episode, not the season? 4.5. I think it did a few things wrong, but it did a lot right.
Oh, yeah. Probably a great way to...
Yeah, it's definitely a B+ A- kind of episode. It did the things that it needed to. Aside from the whole, oh, I'm going to drop alcohol on all of you, and that's the magic weakness. That's Glass's kryptonite. Yeah, that's 4.5. I'd do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll do it for this episode. So when we come back, we're going to start up season 2 of Rising of the Shield Hero. Andrea, are you excited?
Yep, I am.
We should probably approach this just really quick. You're excited for season 2. Are you excited for season 3 when we eventually get there?
Uh-huh.
Because it's been okayed. It's ready to go.
I know.
So we're happy about that. But we will see you guys next time for season 2 of Rising of the Shield Hero. In the meantime, continue to show your support for the podcast by liking us on YouTube, Spotify, Player.fm, Amazon, Google, and Apple Podcasts, we definitely appreciate it there, and it definitely goes a long way to be able to help us out. And also, you can check out some of the other content that we have going on, because myself, Alex, and Brinton are reviewing Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle City. So you guys can check that out, and we are doing that in honor of the late Kazuki Takahashi, the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! And so you guys can check that out, as well as maybe some of the past episodes that we've done, the previous season of Shield Hero, all that stuff. Let us know what you think, and share those around. We definitely appreciate sharing it around, reviewing it on the respected sites, and I guess that's it. So we will see you guys next time. And of course, if you have suggestions for any series for us to do, you can leave those at geekyweek@gmail.com. Until the next time, my friends, we will see you for Season 2 of Rising of the Shield Hero.